Hi, I'm Dr. Bertice Berry, and I want to tell you a story. Years ago, I met a beautiful couple at a luxury resort spa kind of thing, and they shared the story of how they met, and it was wonderful. But more importantly, they shared the story of how they stayed together. The night before the wedding, this young man, they were like 19 and 20 at the time, um, he came to his bride to be's house and knocked on the door and said, I really need to talk to her. And everybody was kind of worried and thought maybe he was having cold feet and had planned on calling off the wedding. But that wasn't the case. He wanted to sit down and map out what their relationship would look like. He wanted to determine who they wanted to be to each other. And so his bride to be, being this really smart woman, and they both had big careers, said, Great, let's do it. So they pulled out charts and pencil and paper and they sat down and decided what they really loved. And they realized quickly they both met traveling. They were traveling back home and they loved travel. They wanted to do travel as much as they could. They wanted to see the entire world. They wanted to take high end trips and low end trips and some walking trips and trips in between. They wanted to travel. And so this young man said, Well, you know that what that means. We probably won't have children. We probably won't have a big house or fine cars or any of those things. And even though we'll achieve the financial success to do that, our goal should be to work each year so that we can have a little more time off to go travel and then plan out these trips. And so that's what they decided to do. And they said that they had to, if they weren't clear on who they wanted to be, society would come in and tell them who they should be. 35 years later, when I met them, they were still together and like dating and loving their lives together. And they told me that they had recently gone home to their apartment that they still had, and they had maybe had three cars in these 35 years, but they barely drove the cars, and cars were always fine. They could sell them over and get something else. And the sister-in-law had come to visit and was laughing about how they hadn't moved forward at all. They just had the same old car and the same old house, and they didn't have anything. And she had a big fine house and all of her kids, and she was worried, like, what are you going to be at the end of your days? And they just looked at each other and smiled. And that night they sat in bed. They just laughed all night because they knew many times they had to bail her out in her acceptance of somebody else's standards. And they had to take care of the things that she couldn't take care of because they were always overwhelming. And yet she was putting down their idea of what worked for them. I have five children. I got three all at once. The baby was 3 months old when I got her, and two more came along. And because my children were young and had extra needs, and it was chaotic and amazing and interesting, I decided then who we would be and what we would do. I knew that there were some things that were imperative, there were some things that were important, and there were some things that I defined as just not that deep. It was imperative that they have a strong foundation in love. It was imperative that they had all the education that I could muster. It was imperative that they had therapy and great health care and provided with proper health and nutrition was imperative. It was important for them to know family and to be steeped in culture and to have experiences that were unique and wonderful and tied back into their purpose. Some things that were not that deep were birthdays, just weren't that deep, still aren't. Um, the kids would say to me, Is my birthday going to be on the birthday or do I get two birthdays this year? And they'd get excited if they were getting two, which meant that I was traveling for work and wasn't going to be home on the actual day, but they would have two birthdays. And so, because I looked at it that way, I didn't get crazy or frazzled over things that society says are imperatives. I decided what my imperatives would be. One of those things that wasn't that deep was Christmas decorations. And once when we moved into a house, The neighbors came by after a few days, after Thanksgiving, and said, "You guys are not putting up any lights?" And I said, "No." They said, "You're not even going to put a wreath on the doors?" "No." "Well, we'll give you a wreath." "It's okay." "Are you Muslim?" "No." "Are you atheist?" "No." "We're Christian." "You're not putting up decorations?" "No." "Why not?" "Not that deep." And a lot of people just could not figure it out. One year we did put up a tree because Fatima said all her friends had a tree and she wanted a tree. So I said, "Okay, we put up a tree." We put up a tree and somehow the tree fell on them. They said they were under there trying to get things and the tree fell on them. They always got presents, but we just didn't put them under a tree. I don't wrap them either. Not that deep. So anyway, we do take wonderful trips during holidays, and they explore and got to see amazing things all over the world, even as children, because the not that deeps were not that deep. I remember once a friend coming by and sitting down and crying and saying, "I've not been in a Christian's home that didn't have a tree, and I didn't know how much it was affecting me, and it is." And he said, "It just feels like I'm loved here too." And it was interesting because the thing that we were doing that wasn't that deep to us became deep for him because it was a way of extending love. Here's the thing, I know that I always get pushback about what it is that I do and how I do it. Um, and that's okay because I already showed you the ninja move. You come pushing and I've already moved and you fall. Um, you have to decide what your imperatives are. What are your importance? And what are the things you're willing to say? It's just not that deep. Because these things that are imperative must be given my undivided attention. I must focus greatly on this to make sure that everything is okay. But those things over there are just not that deep. We used to go to the Wild Animal Park in San Diego every week for every year. They had storytelling at night and hot chocolate, and we had a membership, and we could go and you can feed the animals up close and you see them at night because most animals are nocturnal and you got to see them at night. And we would get there and Fatima would go. We'd run up to that giant tree and say, "Here's our tree." And it was. Life is beautiful. Find yours in it and don't be pulled so quickly into everybody else's stuff. I love you. I love you. And that is an imperative.